Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of A Ball and a Chance. I'm your host, Angela Lewis. And on the podcast today, we have Wayne Dawkins. Wayne is a Jamaican-Canadian sports entrepreneur, basketball development leader, and the founder and director of P.H.A.S.E Academy and Dawkins P.H.A.S E Global Ltd. With more than 25 years of experience in youth sports development. Wayne has built programs across Jamaica, Canada, the United States, and Africa that creates pathways for student athletes to access scholarships, professional opportunities, and personal growth through basketball. We know that sports plays a major role in opening doors of opportunity. Wayne has helped over 500 athletes earn post-secondary scholarships, which is huge, while also providing elite training, national competition, and exposure opportunities. Since launching P.H.A.S.E Academy, Jamaica in 2021, Wayne has played a major role in expanding basketball opportunities on the island through camps, leagues, showcases, and international partnerships. He has organized professional exposure events that Jamaican athletes have been connected with the NBA, FIBA, international scouts, while also helping position Jamaica as an emerging basketball hub in the Caribbean. He was appointed the technical director for Jamaica's under-17 program, where he has worked to strengthen the country's youth development pipeline with long-term Olympic aspirations. Oh, would love to see Jamaica in the Olympics for
Oh yeah,
basketball. That'd be incredible.
definitely.
Wayne is known for his commitment to community impact and continues to use sports as a vehicle to develop leaders, create opportunities, and inspire the next generation of Jamaican athletes. Wayne, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for a wonderful introduction. Giving my full bio. Seems like I haven't heard that about myself in a long time, even though I share that with you. But thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Sometimes we need to be reminded of what we've done. We forget about it when you just head down doing the work, but you have poured so much into young people. So I would love for you to share a bit about your basketball background and why youth development is so important to you.
Uh, it's interesting because I just had this conversation with a friend of mine. What basketball meant to me growing up. Why I really try to excel at it. I grew up in Canada after leaving Jamaica at a very young age, and was introduced to American football first. That was my family's first sport. But basketball for some reason became something that I was I just, it was a lot more natural how I kind of picked it up. I was an athlete, but something about basketball, like I was able to excel and become very good early. I played on the Alberta provincial team, which would be like almost like a state all-star team that competes against other states. I played on one city championships at the high school level. Was always an all-star, top five player in the city. Even when I moved to a bigger city like Toronto from Calgary, eventually got a scholarship to Eastern Michigan. I was at Eastern Michigan for a couple of years. That's back in the Fab 5 days. Had a
Mm-hmm.
chance to play against, Chris Webber and Jalen Rose and those guys. It was a dream come true. Interestingly enough, because Ramil Robinson was a Jamaican-born player at the University of Michigan Wolverine. So, when I found that out, it became my dream school. And I never got to the Michigan Wolverines, but I got a chance to play in Chrysler Arena, which was a dream. From there, I ended up transferring some things. The reality of basketball kind of hit me. I didn't have the kind of support that was necessary, and ended up transferring to American International College in Springfield, Mass. And then had a great run there, winning conference championships and going to the NCAA D2 tournament. Along the way, why I end up working with children is because I realized that basketball for me was not. It wasn't my competitiveness that made me good in basketball. It's almost like it. I just wanted something to save my life. I was a very insecure kid, because of the kind of communities I grew up in, very insecure. Basketball gave me a sense of security. that because of my talent and stuff like that, it's almost like incubated me from some of the harsh realities of of the things that I was dealing with at home and in the community. And that's why also when it didn't work out at Eastern Michigan, it was so devastating because it was my safety, it was my sanctuary. And then that's when I went into university, I wanted to become a social worker, and that was kind of still part of my desire to want to create a protection for the vulnerable, kids and the community. My professor said, "No, Wayne, I would recommend it because you wear your heart on your sleeve. You're probably going to have a difficult time in social work. Why don't you try education? You can still have the same kind of community impact with less of the kind of more challenging situations emotionally, mentally that I would be facing as a social worker." And I took her advice, and then once I went into education, I had a great principal who encouraged me to use my any talent I had to inspire and encourage kids. And then I also was in the church. I got saved, and ended up in the youth ministry. And the pastor said the same thing. Use your talent to you know to to the glory of God, and make whatever talent you have your ministry. And so that's it. But
Yeah.
I just
So, and
I
and
was
Phase One
off.
Academy is born.
Yeah, and essentially it was, like the community. There was a few other organizations before we got to phase 1. But you kind of dabbling in community
Hmm.
organizations, and I was still very young. I was still in my early 20s when I started teaching and doing community work. So I was still kind of figuring it out. But phase 1, by the time phase 1 was official, I kind of, there was a very clear focus and understanding of what I wanted to do as a community builder, as somebody who was going to be using basketball as this vehicle. It became very clear, and so that's why phase 1, you know once it once I launched phase 1, that was it. 25 years plus years later, here it is, all over the world. Been all over the world with it, and have been able to be blessed to do some incredible things.
That you mentioned a couple things that I want to highlight. One, that sports can be an incubator for so many kids. It like puts you around people that care. It gives you a
Yes,
safe space to go, and it gives you something
absolutely.
to do where you can see yourself improving. It gives you community, and that is a blessing. I like the word
Yes.
incubator. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say it in that way, but that's really what sports is.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important that we as coaches, and you know like we we are very responsible with the the role that we play. Like
Mhm.
a great deal of responsibility, because there are a lot of kids that, like myself, that are coming into sports looking for a safe space to grow and to feel protected, feel safe. And and you have some coaches that they're not there for that. They're there to win, win games and beat the chess, and get the ego, get the ego fix, or to advance an athlete, or their son or their daughter, and advance them, and that's their purpose for being there. But those exchanges between coaches and the athletes, that are there because they are vulnerable, could be can be devastating. If
Yeah.
if you're not responsible with how you handle it.
I want to dive a bit more into that because of everything that's happened with the hurricanes and the rebuild and the responsibility that
Hmm.
the kind of pressure and responsibility and desire to grow, to rebuild. Can you talk about kind of how it's impacted you? And I know we've had a number of conversations around like how can we support? How can I support? What more can be
Hmm.
done? Will you talk about kind of where things were, where they are, and where they can be?
Yeah, I mean, again, I really appreciate this angle of it because this is kind of, it means a lot to me. Because basketball, why I chose Jamaica is I knew that I have the ability to community build, and I've done it successfully with basketball. So, coming to Jamaica, I was really excited. I had some other projects that I've done here that were mainly education focused and things like that. And that shift to basketball, I felt would be very powerful in terms of bringing sort of like structured youth sport, to Jamaica because it's not something that is there. Youth club basketball, for example, didn't exist. You have 20% of the high schools that participate in basketball and no youth club system. So if you don't go to one of those 20% of the high schools that have a basketball program, there really isn't a community entry point into basketball. And it's a it's popular, trendy. It's one of the trendy sports in the world. And when you look at youth that look like us, I mean, it's a huge draw. So it's a valuable tool that's not being used. So I was like, okay, great. Let me jump in there and start building this thing. So along comes a hurricane now as making, we're starting to make some headway, which again, very difficult because getting investment into the youth level in the community in the Caribbean is very, very difficult. Most people's solution to helping youth in the Caribbean is to kind of identify kids that pass the eyeball test and ship them out. So you got the odd few, and then kind of say, hey, yeah, when they make it big, they'll come back and save everyone else. Well, there's no evidence of that, because when you look at the number of successful basketball players of Jamaican descent, you know, how many of them have a presence on the island? And this is not a knock. I absolutely do not want to knock any of them. I'm just saying that that's that's not the best route to go. So the decision to be here and build here and everything was, I felt like, okay, this would now kind of eliminate kind of just singling out the one or two that passed the eyeball test and being able to now build something that could support the other 99% of the kids that don't
Mm-hmm.
pass the eyeball test. So then along comes a hurricane, a second hurricane, because there's still a lot of damage and things that were done from the previous hurricane, which was only about a year and a half ago. A hurricane, well, I forget the name of the hurricane before,
It's
before,
okay.
yeah. Um, and, now you have this second hurricane. And with each hurricane, you have poor infrastructure as it is. So now courts that were already kind of in terrible condition are in worse condition. There's very few indoor facilities, but what what ones exist, kind of like we had an auditorium where we had put a wood floor in Montego Bay, and it was the only wood floor indoor, in an indoor space on the North Coast that was just there dedicated to run turn, but it got flooded and destroyed. So that space was gone. So with the second hurricane, it kind of took what was already a very poor infrastructure and kind of set it back even further. Um, so you can imagine the discouragement, as for the kids and myself, everyone who was kind of watching the game growing, and then here's this huge setback. Um, so the the decision from there was kind of like, it was very, very important because if you kind of took it for face value, a lot of people would have said, "Man, we need somebody with deep pockets. This is bigger than us. This is
Mm-hmm.
government. Let's once they step in, we can kind of go back at it." But once you start talking to the children and you realize just how much hope was being lost,
Mm.
the hopelessness, and then when you look at children that are making poor decisions, and you can kind of make a correlation between
Yeah.
no hope and bad decisions and hope and good decisions, you kind of say, okay, you know what, this is actually we need to stay the course, not because there's this promise of scholarships and all the, being a pro. No, we need to stay the course because we represent hope. We
Yeah.
represent something that they need to, at a time like this, they need some sort of something to attach to, that to give them sort of, like a reason to fight, continue to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, there's a couple organizations that focus on mental health right now. And what was said to me is that the mental health crisis is has been accelerated significantly because of the devastation and what these kids saw and face. And we've done a number
Definitely.
of surveys within our kids, and a number of the kids have been expressing struggling with depression. Yeah. And you got to think about, Jamaicans, a very prideful group. For these
Mm-hmm.
kids to be admitting that, it's real.
Yeah, that
It's real.
that is something that isn't talked about enough is how devastations from the weather impact mental health, particularly of children,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Because they're, they see that they have very little structure and opportunity as it
Yeah,
is. And then now you got this massive storm that literally devastates what little structure and opportunity that's in front of you. That's huge, huge blow.
it is. And Wayne, one of the things that I was really impressed by and didn't anticipate when we had initial conversations is the amount of international opportunities that you work to provide for the students. Like, can you
Mhm.
explain just what it takes to make it to the tournament in Florida or I think you told me y'all went to Boo Williams and you were explaining like the visa process and you don't know if they're
Oh
going to get
yeah.
approved. Can you, for those who don't truly understand what it takes for you to bring your teams to the US for a tournament, can you share what that entails?
Yeah. So the decision to go there was, again, to try and create this a greater sense of hope and opportunity. That's what it's in. And so when I came into Jamaica for the first time, it was, my first experience with trying to travel with a team was with the Jamaican junior national team, when I was appointed the technical director, and I was a coach. And now here we are getting ready to go to Central Baskets to compete in Belize, but it's more costly to travel from Caribbean island to Caribbean island direct. So it's cheaper to go through the states. So if you connect in Florida and to go to Belize, it's way cheaper than trying to go directly to Belize, through Panama or to Guatemala, one of those countries. So here we are now getting ready to go compete in Belize. We think we got this great team. Five of our athletes needed what is called a transit visa, meaning they could be allowed to pass through the U.S. to get to there. And all five of them were denied, you know. Um, and this was, at the time, was like, it's about a few $100 US a pop to go through this visa process. And that's not renewable. And that's not refundable. It's done. You pay once. If you don't get approved, it's done. And then with the timeline, we couldn't get a chance to raise money and take them again. So we had to get some second tier kids and find some other kids who may have already gone through the process and had the visas. So we get this underhanded team like we basically, you know had a second tier team that
Yeah.
ended up going there. So after that, I said, you know what? We're not going to do this again. What we're going to do is, by running an international travel team, then now we'll go through the visa process with more kids on a consistent basis. So we'll have a number of kids that are passport ready, or sorry, visa ready. So this type of situation
Hmm.
doesn't happen again. And then international basketball would also allow us to give the kids exposure in the North American backyard instead of waiting for people to come to us.
Yeah.
So we start down the road of trying to do it now outside of the federation, and we took 17 athletes and to get visas at the time, probably about a few $100 US each per kid, and every single one of them was denied. So that
Everyone was denied?
all 17
So
athletes were denied.
let's slow this down for a second because this
Yeah.
is I like I lived in Europe and in Colombia, but there's a lot of people who've never attempted to like get a visa anywhere. So
Yeah.
will you explain what does it mean to apply for a visa and how long is that process?
Okay. So what it means, so if you're, whatever country you're from, acquiring a passport is like the first step. And so acquiring a passport in your country is not an issue. Um, you know, Most countries are going to issue their citizens passports, not a, that's not an issue. But now when it come time to travel, you know, if you have a non-visa relationship with a country, kind of like Canada and the US, you don't have to apply for a visa. It's just you just show your passport and you go. But in a situation like Jamaica, where it's a non-visa relationship with the US, you have to um, put in an application, wait for an appointment, and an appointment could take anywhere up to 6 months or sometimes even more for you to get an appointment. So you have to pay for the application, and then wait for your appointment. You go through this process. There's no real prep, other than whatever questions that are on the application, and then you wait in this long line at the U.S. Embassy in your country, and then you go in front of this window in front of with everybody around you listening while this person who, um, when it comes to being sensitive to what's
Right.
going on, it's not the case. And they're asking you some questions and they're just grilling you on things that you didn't even know you were going to be asked, just because unfortunately that's the nature of what that process can be like.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get denied, they just give you a green slip and you're gone. And that's it. And they tell you you don't meet the criteria, and then you got to wait 6 months at least and pay the money and apply again.
So they make the decision in that moment.
In that moment, you get a green slip and
Wow.
you get sent off. And then it's another 6 months before you're eligible to apply again, and you have to pay that same clip. You got to pay that same amount of money. So after all 17 of us our athletes were denied, you can imagine these kids were devastated. I had sold this to the parents as, yes, this is it. We're going to go to America. We're going to be the first Jamaican travel team, and we're going to go to these tournaments. And every single child was denied. And I had to go back and I looked at my wife and I was like, I am going to be the most hated man in Jamaica. But again, I'm very faithful. I stayed the course. We waited 6 months, and we raised more money. And guess what? Every single one of those athletes that were denied got through, and that
Huge.
was and the rest is history. And now we're probably at about a 90% success rate as an academy with the U.S. Embassy getting the travel visas. We've had over 100 athletes that have got travel visas, and these kids have been to Florida, New York, and all over the place, and got to see family that they thought they'd never get to see because they have, with immigrant families, it's a lot of pulling. Families are
Mm-hmm.
really pulled apart, leaving for greater opportunities, and so grandparents were reunited with kids, and aunties and parents were united with children that they had never hadn't seen in years. Just it's it's such incredible when you talk about hope and connection, and inspiring kids to continue the journey. And it's so much more than basketball. Yeah,
It
getting
is.
that visa, and than just going to a Boo Williams or Made Hoops tournament.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is incredible. There's something to be said for patience and staying the course, right? Because
Mm.
after those first 17, you could have been like, okay, well that model doesn't work either, right?
No.
The federation model doesn't work. The visa to the states model doesn't work. But what made you go back? Like, why did you decide no, we're going to try again?
You know what? There's there is a stubbornness that I have that is rooted
Mm-hmm.
in my own Jamaican pride. When I talk about Jamaicans being prideful, I'm talking about myself. Like I'm like, "Nah, man, you gotta reject the wool away your butt." Like, "No, this can't work." You know, like like there's something that says like no, there's an anger and it says no, and then besides that, it's looking at the face of all these children
Them
who,
babies. Woo.
yeah, and they are me. When I look at them, they are me. I used to say to them the only difference between me and them was I got out in a sense of I was able to, thank you from my mother and my father. My mother had that same persistence and stubbornness and got us to Canada and grew up in an environment where the infrastructure was there to develop my nurture my talent. So that's
Mm-hmm.
really the only difference because some of them, when I look at them physically, athletically, everything, like they're superior to me. So I said, wow, imagine if you got the opportunity to be nurtured in the environment I was in. And so there's several factors that that made me can, stay the course. But I think there's a real stubbornness with me when it comes to wanting to see my kids and kids that look like me especially win, you know,
Yeah. Oh,
because
I know. Yeah.
I know I know the deck is stacked against them, and that's just the reality. I mean, it's
It
and
is.
so if I give up, I know that, and I'll share with you this a documentary that was done on me all the way back in 2001, and I always laugh because I said, "There's that pride." Because early in the documentary, they're asking me again the same kind of thing about why I do what I do. I said, "Well, you know what? Nobody else is," so I said, "I'll do
Gotta
it."
do it.
And it was just
Mm-hmm.
like this, almost like this arrogant pride, where it's like, but it was still, it was very root. It was is rooted in a wanting to help and see my community and the kids in it thrive and get opportunities. That's it.
No, it's tremendous. It's tremendous, Wayne. And when you recognize how blessed you've been to have traveled and lived in different places, you know that the world exists beyond like the
Yeah.
one place maybe where you're from. And so you feel a sense of responsibility to
Yes.
expose young people to what's possible because like you said, you're literally looking at yourself reflected in their
Yeah.
eyes and in their hearts. And so
Yeah. Oh yeah. And in
you're
their hearts is it. I love you saying that. That's like
because
this. Yeah. That's true.
yes. Because if you had the ability to have the opportunity, there's so many more that would benefit from it. It's not a talent or a desire. It's literally just an access issue.
Yeah. It's access, and it has nothing to do. I don't talk about my own personal wealth or lack of, or that, because I always say to people that it's it is irrelevant
Mm-hmm.
if how rich or not rich I am personally really is irrelevant, because you have people who have thousands of times the money that I have, but less impact at the community
Mm-hmm.
level. And you have people who have even less, way less than me, and they have, again, 10 times the impact that I have. And so when you kind of look at why that is, like, some of the ingredients that make somebody with less more successful versus somebody with, like, in terms of tangible dollars and and stuff like that, is some of those intangibles that we've been talking about, like, being, that persistence and that empathy, and be able to be empathetic and to be able to see the heart of others,
Mm-hmm.
there's these intangible things that, faith, let me not, like, yeah, like, you really have to trust God. Like I tell people all the time, when you get up and you got, like, sometimes I'm looking around and I'm seeing 100 kids and the gym, and I'm like, how are they going to get home? How are we going to get uniforms on their back? How are we going to, how are we going to feed them? They're hungry. And then 3 hours later, kids have been balling. They nobody's dropping on the floor and dying from thirst or hunger. Everybody gets home safely. Everybody gives you that call in the group chat that they're home, and you're like, wow,
Yeah.
how did
It's
we just do it?
incredible.
You travel to the US, and And when I say when we travel to the US, we're bringing kids to America, and it's like, it's like, remember, their parents don't have visas, so
Right.
they're trusting me to take their kids safely and bring them back. And every single time we make it back safely and we get there, it's like you can't say, "Oh, that was me."
Yeah.
You like alone, like I can be a vessel, I can be a conduit, I can do all these, but to sit up and beat my chest and think that them kids got there and got back safely because of me. You know how many times I've been tired and fell asleep and left the kids awake, and praise the Lord that they're safe or something. Like, there's so many things that could have gone sideways, but when God's all over it, when you get that call, and or you call the parents, say, "Hey, we're back, everybody's safe, come get your kids." You know,
Yeah, that's a blessing. Cool. God has
yeah, it's
definitely
a
been covering y'all.
amen. So yeah, absolutely. So sorry. So I mean, so it's a lot of those intangibles that that make it possible to have a huge community impact, because people who are very rich, they're worried about liabilities, and they're worried about risks, like that could deplete those dollars and cents.
Mhm.
And so I've got a lot of rich people who said, no, I'm not going to do it because lawsuit, this, that, it's going to fall back on me financially. And so they have this pool of wealth, but they end up doing nothing because of fear of losing it.
Mhm.
But I'm not afraid to lose it. You can sue me if you want. Like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, if it falls back on me, it's like, I'm not really worried about it. I've been able, I know to go from zero to food on the table, from zero to gas in the tank, from zero. Rich. There's a lot of rich people that don't know
Yeah. Like
anymore.
once
That's it. They're
that's
not going to do.
it. Yeah. No, no, I'm with you. It's like when you know what it's like not to have a whole lot, it's only up from there.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
like
Yeah.
we
I'm
gonna
like,
take
hey,
the
no
chance
problem.
because I know I'm gonna be all right. Like we gonna be
Because
fine.
where else am I going? I have to eat. I got, like, so I'm gonna figure it out. Like, we got it. But yeah, so so unfortunately, some people who are very wealthy, they become a prisoner to their wealth and their ability to give back. And
Mhm.
I know a lot of wealthy people, and they're like that. And if you look at them and say, hey, take a little bit of risk with your wealth, they're gonna. And it's kind of interesting, because there's that scripture that says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get to heaven.
Mhm.
Like, I had heard that scripture early in life, and it's kind of like one of those things, like, at the time when you read, it's like, that's kind of a weird thing. Like,
Weird,
give me my
yeah.
money. Give me my million. I'll figure it out. I'll figure
Mhm.
out how to get to heaven with my million. But then, as you kind of grow older and you mature, you start realizing why it is, why it's so difficult to be rich, and, be willing to step away from it, even for your own salvation, much less to try and help, somebody else. You realize how difficult it is. And for those of us who haven't experienced immense amounts of wealth, I mean, I,
Financially.
financially,
Yeah.
that fear doesn't, it never looms over my head.
Yeah.
Never looms over my head. I'm never worried about it.
One of the things that I want to dive into is when you
Sorry.
talk about people supporting. No, this is the perfect segue. People supporting. Talk through the structure of the programming and all of the ways, like when people are supporting, they're supporting travel. What else are
Yeah.
they supporting?
Okay. Okay. So, for example, as an academy, we have a main travel program where we have kids that we are preparing to compete internationally. These are kids that are serious about basketball, and families that want to make a very serious commitment. That represents maybe about 130 kids in our academy. And then we have, like, our sub programs that are, like our youth leagues that we run, and camps that we run, that facilitate basketball, for another 400 kids. But it's much more on a recreational level. The running and operating of these programs are, you know, are something where in Jamaica you have uh, one limited facilities. And so if you want to do things on a consistent basis year round, then you have to find indoor space. Indoor space is a premium and it's still very expensive. The University of West Indies indoor space, for example, it's $10,000 Jamaican an hour, which might be like, 65, $70 US an hour. That's, you know, even in the US, that's high,
Yeah.
much less in,
70.
in Jamaica, where, minimum wage in Jamaica might be about $90 US a week, like, so, just to give you an idea of, like how money works down here.
Mm-hmm.
A loaf of bread is, maybe about, $550, $600 Jamaican, So, $10,000 Jamaican an hour is a lot, and it's a lot to ask of kids and, to do that. Well, facilities, and if you don't use the indoor facilities, and then it's outdoor space, and then outdoor space comes with, again, it comes with a lot of drawbacks in terms of weather and exposure to sun and exposure to
Mm-hmm.
elements, surfaces that are just not ideal for
Yeah.
competitive. All right, so there's a facility. So accessing facilities and finding facilities where you can run programs consistently. That's where it kind of starts. And once you kind of solve that problem, um, basketball is a sport where if you try to run it in just one community, your numbers would be very limited. It works best when it's island wide. So your numbers. So when I talk about 130 kids in our academy, that's 130 kids from across Jamaica. So that means that in order for us to train, you have to centralize your programs. So every weekend, for example, we have what we call our island-wide training for our academy, where kids are coming from Montego Bay, Kingston, Albertown, everywhere. They're coming from all over. So figuring out transportation on a weekly basis to get them to our centralized
Wow.
training. There's a young man, I'm going to be doing his, what we've been doing his interview. His name's Richard Brock, 14-year-old, 6'8", incredible kid. Lost his dad last summer. It's, it's just an incredible story. And, you know, it takes me about an hour and a half to drive and pick him up from where I live in Mandeville to to our meeting spot in Albertown in Trelawney. And he comes almost 45 minutes from where he is to meet me there. And then we drive together about 2.5 hours to go to where we have our centralized training. And we do that every week. And we go home almost every week. And we grab other kids along the way, and we
Yeah.
pack my van up, and we go. So there's kids that we have to find money for, like, so the kid from Kingston, we put them on a bus. We'll sometimes book a bus, or they'll take the bus to, they'll transport. So those transportation costs are huge, but they're very important because that's the only way we can centralize training and bring
Mm-hmm.
enough kids together, especially kids of a higher caliber, where you can get good quality training, iron sharpening iron, and do that, especially if you want to do travel teams. The other programs, the other expense now with these kids is they're always going to come hungry and and um and need money for transportation. So so we have kids, for example, who, in order to come to training, they will not eat lunch because they have to choose between their lunch money so they can go home after training, or they eat and don't come to training. So if we can provide meals for them, then they don't have to sacrifice their lunch money to come, to a program. So, you know,
Yeah. This.
these, yeah, there's no extra. There's very few that have extra. So
Mm-hmm.
these kids are budgeted to the coin
Yeah.
for food and transportation to get them through the week. So when you start adding extracurricular, then something has to sacrifice.
Yeah.
So
Something has to
I
give.
could keep going, but you kind of see how
I
it
do.
becomes like, like there's your cost of facilities, then there's your cost of transportation, then now it's your cost of basic survival, making sure they have food, and then you can get to uniforms and, you know, visas and all the other kind
Hmm.
of stuff that would be the next kind of wave of
When
things.
was what's remarkable is every Saturday the kids have something to look forward to.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like everyone knows this on Saturdays we're going to meet up and we're going to do whatever it takes to get there. However we have to get there, we are going to get there. Opposed
Yes.
to being idle, it gives them, you know, a something I something really tangible, community, which is super special.
Yeah, and it's hope. And when you kind of learn these kids' stories, and like I get emotional when I talk about their stories, so I'm very careful. I am like my professor said, I am that guy. So talking about their stories are very, very difficult. But when you start understanding that, and you start visiting these kids where they live and what they see on a daily
Mhm.
basis, then you start understanding how important that weekend is, kind of like you're
Yeah.
saying. Like we used to get phone calls where like, coach, please, can you just do something so I can leave my community and be gone because, like especially when like gang wars like break
Mhm.
out and these kids are seeing bodies and gunshots, and then now even recently that, these kids that, they know like when, police are coming to, to come kind of clean up the neighborhood because in Jamaica, like policing is a little bit different. Like, the
Mhm.
whole we come in and, arrest you and have a conversation and handcuff you and take you down to the station and talk about this horrible crime you did. That's not the process. The process is they're going to warn everybody in the building, we're coming, and this is who we're coming for. And if you're still there when we get there, then you are going to be in the line of fire because
Oh,
they're coming to
wow.
they're coming to kill. They're
Wow.
not they're
Yeah.
not they're not coming. So imagine these kids are like, they know the police are coming, they know who they're coming for, and they're like, man, just get me out.
Got to get out.
By the time they come back, it's they're gonna be bringing bodies out.
Mhm.
And and even if that is your extreme case, then but you still have the the kids that are vulnerable because of that they know they're going home to molestation, they're going home
Yeah.
to empty fridges, they're going home to
Yeah.
and the more you learn their stories, the more you feel compelled to keep that structure
100%.
there and just
Because you
that's it.
it's it's this recognition and realization that is so much bigger than you or me or whatever. It's bigger than
Yeah,
us. It's if this stops, then they miss out on the opportunity.
absolutely. And if this stops, they're going to be they stay in an environment where, yeah, a lot of them survive it, but they survive it and they become more hardened, more
Mhm.
callous, more because the less time they spend out of it, the more they have to harden themselves in order
Mm,
to
to
survive
function
in it.
inside of it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and places like, unfortunately, like Jamaica, and there's places that they'll invest more money into policing than giving youth, structured extracurricular or an outlet. They'll
Mhm.
invest that money into policing. So,
Yes.
it's unfortunate, but like I said, that's why I said it's the decision, kind of like when we talked about before, like the decision whether to stay or to go was, it was not, had nothing to do with basketball, at, at all. And if it did, it would have been that I came there for the wrong reasons in the first place. Yeah.
For sure. For sure. This has been really powerful on so many levels, and it's a conversation that I wanted to have from the first time that we, had the first conversation. I wanted to, dive deeper into the realities of youth sports in other parts of the world. We know that
Yeah.
basketball in particular is growing globally and can open the
Yeah.
doors of access, but there's still a lot of youth globally who don't have access, and you have done a tremendous job being relentless in ensuring that the young people you work with have opportunities. If Tell us about what you have coming up.
Okay.
Are there tournaments coming up? I think there's a young man who came to the States recently. Will you talk about like what's going well and what's coming up?
Yeah. So exciting enough when you got the caliber of athletes that Jamaica possesses naturally.
Mhm.
That consistency that's protecting them also that is the same consistency that's allowing them to develop as basketball players. Coincidentally, look at that. So we have a number of athletes that are excelling and doing extremely well, and we're play on that made hoop circuit, and so the live period starting. So we're getting ready to travel. We've developed some partnerships with some clubs, the South Florida Kings, for example, and partnership with coaches in Baltimore, Philadelphia that help us out, take care of our kids, and so even if we can't physically, bring a team, we're able to send individual athletes because they have
Oh,
their so that's look at that. So that we're able to send them off individually to participate with other programs. So we're getting ready for our travel ball right now, and we're very excited because some of these kids who, like I said, have this very difficult story now also have this incredible story ahead of them of opportunity and success, ahead. Back in Jamaica, we're still running our youth league. We still run the only indoor youth league and club system. We are looking for sponsors and support. We're kind of on a slow roll getting that out, just because the available dollars are are much lower. Most people have rejected us because they said that the majority of their funds has been gone to hurricane relief, and respectfully so, and I've respected that. Makes sense. So the available dollars is a lot less for our programs, but we'll have that. Our youth league will be running, and we do have our summer camps that we run. We have this Rising Stars camp that we do annually and during the different holiday periods. Um, so those are some of the things that we have going on. We'll have, like I said, we'll have about 50 kids. At the goal is to we're trying to raise enough money to bring 5 teams this summer to Philadelphia, Baltimore for the Made Hoops live period.
when is
And,
that again?
that's July 7th to the 20th. We'll be in
Okay.
Baltimore, Philadelphia. We got a girls team, and which I'm going to tell you something funny about them in a second. But and then we have 4 boys teams: U14, 15, 16, U17 boys.
Okay.
And our first ever girls travel team was last summer, and we took a whole team for the visas, and we lost half the team, and so
Oh,
we only had 5 girls that had the visa to travel, and we had to make a decision: do we cut it or do we go? And we went with 5 girls. We call them the Fearless Five, and we went to the Made Hoops Nationals for girls. They did phenomenal. 5 girls. I mean, at one point, one got injured, and they were playing 4-on-5. And I think, honestly, sometimes I just wish I could do like a documentary
yes.
on some of these experiences. They're so inspirational when you see these kids. So we're hoping we're not in that situation again with the girls, that we'll have like a full roster. But yeah, the girls are like just it's so inspirational, because the ones that love basketball, netball is queen, and
Yes.
so it's very difficult to field a full basketball team. You can't compete against netball, not at this stage, because track and field, netball, football, I mean soccer, like there's these
Mhm.
sports that are so dominant for girls that an emerging sport like basketball, it's very difficult to field a team in one age group, much less like with
For
across all
sure. A
age
full
groups, much
club.
less.
Mhm.
So, and I'm just bringing that up to say that, this summer is an exciting summer for us in terms of what we're hoping. we can do with girls basketball. That's
Yes. Yes, well, I'm excited to see how it all unfolds. We'll of course stay in
Mhm.
contact, and
Yes, thank you.
if there's people who are listening and they want to support, like they want to support phase one, they value what you're doing, how can they help? Where can they find you? How can they connect with you first, and then how can
Yeah,
they help?
I think for those of us who are, like are still like visiting websites and like getting that more robust understanding of programs and what an organization does. I mean, our website is, www dot, phase1academy.com, P.H.A.S.E, the number one academy.com. And, there you'll learn a lot about our programs and different things, but we also have all our fundraising pages where you can sponsor individual athletes, you can sponsor a team. We have all of that on there. We can accept money any way possible. We made sure. So Zelle, Cash App, email transfers if you're in Canada, like so yeah, so you can learn about the athletes because their individual profiles are there on the different teams. So that would be probably the best place to learn and do the most. And then after that, our social media is at Phase One Basketball Jamaica, and that is a great place to kind of, and as well, same thing on TikTok, Phase One Academy. That's a great place to kind of learn about the kids and see them. That's I feel we do a really good job of kind of highlighting the
Y'all do.
children on our social media. It won't give you the direct access to fundraising, but you can always DM us and then I'm always a phone call away. uh, I can leave my phone number, or you can share my.
I'll put all your info in the show notes.
Okay, yeah, thank you
So
very
then
much.
you're
Yeah.
welcome. You're welcome. I'll put all the links. So definitely reach out to Wayne. Wayne, I just want to thank you so much for having on today and having this interview with me. I'm excited about all that is to come and the support that is to follow.
Yeah, I'm just, you know what? I just want to say thank you. Like you don't understand how much it means for me to have, somebody like yourself. I was kind of so shocked when you told me you didn't have Jamaican roots or Jamaican, like
I might,
you
I
might.
don't know because, the
Yeah.
way the history, but I
Well,
really feel
yes.
like I have Caribbean roots.
Okay.
I,
Well,
I remember my first time in Jamaica and it was just something about the island. I, yeah, I really feel
well,
like
I
I'm in.
I I just about to say, through us as with Phase One, myself, you are an honorary Jamaican, no doubt,
Thank
no doubt.
you.
I may not be the one to, because I left young, so I may not be the one to be the, give you the official anointing, but
Yes.
we're gonna arrange for you to meet some of my kids. I'll let them get it done. I'll make the real, Jamaican kids that I got. Because once they get a chance to see this and meet you, oh my goodness, they're gonna be so grateful for you.
Oh, I would
Because
love to. I would
yeah,
absolutely love to.
yeah, and they're gonna love you, and I think they're gonna love you because you're gonna, there's something about the Caribbean. You're gonna be auntie and mommy, and like
Yeah.
the respect that they're going to have for you because of you just having wanting to impact their life in a positive way is that it's going to be so awesome. And I think anyone that can create a platform and have a platform like yours and give us an opportunity to share and help our kids, for me, as like, I mean, it's an absolute blessing. So thank you so much for your efforts and giving me this opportunity to share. So really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Oh, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for listening to A Ball and a Chance.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop before I start crying because I've been
Yeah.
crying a lot lately. So I'm going to
Okay.
stop before the tears start rolling. Wayne,
Yeah,
thank you for all
me
that you
and you.
do,
So yeah.
all that you continue to do. Thank y'all for listening to A Ball and a Chance. Be sure to check us out, of course,
Yeah.
iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe and leave a comment and leave a review. We always love your feedback, and we'll see y'all next time.
Thank you.
Okay.